to what I think is the eighth guest artist talk. Is that right? Let's say it's eight. I think so. We were seven last time. Yeah, I think we have a total 10. It's the eighth. Yeah, I think I got it right. Eighth guest artist talk of zFestival 2021. Today we have Wang Lu here with us. Wang Lu is a bunch of different things in the music world. She was first a professor to me back at Brown University, where she still teaches, but she's a composer and a pianist, and very good at both of those things. She's worked with a bunch of contemporary ensembles, a bunch of orchestras, and her most current project is working on a opera with the Chicago Opera Theater titled The Beekeepers. And today we're going to hear a little bit about her work and how she puts everything together. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, Lou, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Peter and Shoshana, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm calling from San Francisco, the West Coast, and since it's a small group, maybe I could get to know everyone. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us one thing about yourself related to music or not, I think it helps the conversation. I'm looking at my screen, if that's okay. We start with Julian.
Hello, I'm Julian. I'm currently one of the conducting students at Boston Conservatory. Here at zFest, I am a cellist.
Awesome.
Sometimes I write music occasionally. So I always like listening to music too. All right.
Awesome, thank you. And Jake?
Hi, composer. I just graduated master's degree from Peabody Conservatory, and I like heavy metal. I guess that's what I usually say for the fun fact, and it has a like more, I was gonna say like influence, but it more has like a stranglehold on the music that I write. Like it's I can't and don't ignore it, and I think it's awesome. So that's what's fun about me, I suppose.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Daniel?
Hi, I'm an oboe player from Edmonton, Alberta, and I play a lot of different kinds of music as a freelancer, and I played a couple of operas a couple of years ago, but I don't have a really strong background in opera.
Me neither. Yeah, nice to meet you. And Seamus?
Hi, I'm Seamus. I've been using they, them pronouns lately. I've been off school for about the past, going back for my senior year at Brown, which is how Lou and I know each other. And here at zFest, I'm composing a thing, playing flute in a couple of things, and also doing a little bit of Max MSP for a thing. So that's kind of my deal this summer.
Awesome. Great to see you. Eric?
Hello. I'm currently sitting at a coffee shop. I'm a percussionist based on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
You're playing yeah. You're playing the festival as well.
I'm playing at the festival, yeah.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. Remote percussion, yeah. I see some folks have their video turned off. You don't have to turn it back on. I just want to say hi, Samantha.
Hello, my name is Sam Hogan. I'm a composer, trombonist, and I also sing. But the funny thing is I haven't written a lot of vocal music, which is why I'm here today, which is to learn.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Dionicio?
Hello, I'm a composer based on northern Mexico in a city called Monterrey. I play piano and guitar occasionally, but I'm mostly focused on composition.
Nice to meet you. Did I pronounce your name correctly or no?
It doesn't matter. Just call me Dio if you need.
Oh, Dio. Great. Nice to see you. And Christian?
Hi, I am an oboist currently at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and I'm playing oboe for a couple things here at zFest.
Awesome. Nice to meet you. Two oboists. Yeah. Kai Hei her Chinese, right? Should I pronounce as pinyin or as English? I think it should be pinyin.
My name is Kahei Chen. Chen is
Kai
last
Chen,
name.
yeah.
Yeah. So Kahei is my first name. So I'm from the Louisiana State University, and I study a EMDM program right there. It's about the experimental music and digital media. So I'm a pianist as well, but I do not have a lot of experience in opera, and I'd like to know more about it in the talk today.
Great. Wow. That's about opera. I mean, I'm very new in this. See what I can offer. Nice to see you guys. So I asked Peter how I should do this. Should I just talk or you ask questions? I do have something prepared. I could talk about a few works and you can interrupt me and ask questions. So I want to give you a little bit background. I came to this country 2005 after graduate from the Beijing Central Conservatory with my bachelor's degree in music composition. And I went to Columbia University to pursue a PhD in music composition. That was the first time I left China. That was a big leap. I think this immigrating to a new country and culture, of course, that was by choice. But also when you do that when you're 22, by chance you apply for school and then you got in, you probably were not aware of what's ahead of you. Now giving talks or looking at the works I've done give me a sense of, self-examining and studying on, both a personal and artistic trajectory. So I want to share a few works that kind of have a theme thread such as memory and place and nostalgia, which is quite common. And I realized I'm the kind of composer who work with ideas, like particular ideas and materials, which means I will show you the pieces, which means I find the materials first and then I write the piece and gradually shape the material. Not just to start writing and see what happens kind of process. So now I'm gonna share screen with you. I'm gonna share a PowerPoint and we'll start from the beginning. I want to share a few pieces. The first one here is an urban inventory from 2015, the year I started teaching at Brown University, where I met quite a few wonderful people here, Seamus, Peter, and Julian. That was a commission from the Mata Festival in New York. When I got the commission, I thought about, when you have a chance to write a piece, it comes with a condition. The condition is, of course, the instrumentation and the duration, right? Flute, clarinet, violin, cello, piano, no percussion, kind of pure ensemble. Like, okay, I know those instruments, but what kind of story can I tell? You think about all the instrumental, the repertoires and the techniques, but you also think about, do they actually mean anything? I thought about that, after knowing how and what the instruments can do. Am I going to showcase the instruments in this piece? Probably not. So I need an idea, a story. Usually that's how I work. Somehow it struck me, I only lived in big cities. I grew up in the northwest city of a big capital, the ancient capital of China called Xi'an. I'll show you a little bit video of the nightlife there. And then I moved to Beijing for my undergraduate degree. And then I moved to New York. Then I lived 1 year in Rome. So I never really lived outside of a city. And this commission is from New York. So I thought about something about urban life, and also the time I was growing up. I was born in the 80s. Is the economic reform happening in China? It's after Cultural Revolution in the late 70s. Chairman Mao Zedong died, and then there's a new leader, Deng Xiaoping, said we should, introduce basically what is called capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Basically, it's that, market-driven economy. Then the cities get developed and the infrastructures are built. So the environment I grew up with had a lot of noise, literally noise, and a lot of noise coming from popular music, new media, and new literature, and constructions, and businesses opening. That was the sound I grew up with. And then I moved to Beijing and then New York. It's never away from me. So I thought about this piece to kind of recollect intentionally different urban experience. So the first movement, I thought, started with where I was born and raised until when I was 18, the ancient capital, and where there's a city wall. As you can see, the dome in front of you is from the 13th dynasty. When you live around it, you actually don't think about these. When you talk about it, you're like, oh, that's a historical remain, and you're just around that, you play around the neighborhood. So we usually take walks after dinner, and you can see a lot of people come out, especially during the summer, just to hang out and sing and do their exercise and catch up with people. Another thing I realized is that I'm very interested in people. I'm a people person. Since going to kindergarten, I just, was very chatty and curious about getting to know other kids. I realized that the environment I grew up with has a very tight network. That's where my parents worked. That's where I went to school. That's where we hang out, and that's where we basically the city planning made so that you're networking with people you really know from one generation to the next. For instance, if you're a factory worker, it used to be around the factory, you will have kindergarten, you have hospital, you have, squares, you have theaters, public space, And where I grew up is where my father used to work. And then I know everyone. So we won't go out and see people, just in the street, you know them. I know my friends parents know my parents, and, the grandparents, all that. That's something very different from when I moved to New York. You are just yourself in this city. The same kind of urban experience is quite different. So back to this piece. And something about living in that kind of tightly knit social network is kind of nostalgic to me. So I decided to write this piece. The first moment about this environment. So I took my cell phone. I use my iPhone to record the walks I take with my parents after dinner. Just to keep it on and see what happens. The interesting is that I used to take these walks like every day, if not like, I would say every day, most of the days. I just never thought it sounded anything special. But then it's only after I left the country long enough, when I go back, I feel the density. I feel the kind of intimacy I used to hate. It's like people bumping into each other. Your neighbors know your business, But then all of a sudden I felt like there's something warm and very human about that experience that I miss. So then I started recording, and I added the recording and thought about that could be the piece. But then, you're a musician, you want to take the initiative to shape things. You're a composer, you want to make things. At least for this piece, I was not just let the chance take me wherever it goes. So I edited and decided, I'm not going to leave the first movement like music concrete, I'm going to compose. So it's through my ears, you hear the city park. So there are 2 speakers on stage that plays the tape that's being edited with all kinds of noise and activities. And then I have instrumental music written to go with it. So it's kind of like a framed scene. Not really a real scene. If you go to the exact park, you are going to hear the noise. It's very familiar. But in this moment, you're going to experience with my musical frame, or you could consider like a filter, and gives you a sense of structure. And I thought about it because primarily what you hear would be noise, and how do you structure it? You think about how things, compositionally speaking, could be a variation, quote unquote variation, not necessarily a bit of a variation, but the control and manipulation of material. And things could be recognized as an invisible step moving forward, like a pace through harmonic and timbre planning, right? On the surface, you have a lot of activities, but is the tempo underneath slower or faster is how, a composer wants to give you his or her idea. And then I also thought about one really remarkable thing is the sound world blend into each other. You could hear this music playing from this poor speaker for this group of retired people to dance. And then you have this radio broadcasting another kind of thing. And they're right next to each other. They're okay. They coexist. And they hear each other's sound. They're not annoyed by, the interference. And then they do their own thing. And then you walk through the park, you hear different kinds of stations around. And then the whole park, it's all like a sound walk without any, myself asking anyone to perform. I find that really interesting because we're often, I'm wearing a headphone, right? Nobody knows what I'm listening to. I thought that's really interesting. You can hear some people are walking around trying to learn a foreign language, for instance. Some are with, nursery rhymes. Some are like doing Tai Chi, and you can hear all of that. So that gives part of the musical aspect of the recording. Okay, I'm going to play the movement. Before that, I will play a video I took right outside the park under the city wall, this dome. You can hear some amateur singers singing. There's my neighbors, yeah. Okay, then I'm gonna play the first movement, City Park of Urban Inventory. It's about 2 minutes something. We'll come back to the other movement of this piece later. As you can hear, it's like I'm trying to create a space, right? But another thing I've been asking myself is since the pandemic even more is that we wear the headphones and we hear everything through the headphones. When you hear the live performance of it, you have a clear, defined space of the two speakers playing the recordings and the 5 live musicians playing, instrumental music. Gives this more, to my opinion, if you hear it live, gives it more of like a weird separation. But harmonically they connect as like different layers of space. I thought it's interesting. Any questions? Okay, so as you can hear, some materials appeared later. Maybe you can hear I just manipulated to give to instrumental music concord, like different noise on the instruments and key clicks, for instance, and colonial batuto, or like some harmonic thing towards the very end. I brought it actually at the very beginning of the piece, give it and stretch it longer, so it kind of like even you don't notice there's I'm trying to create like more compositional coherence in terms of structure and signposts for listeners. That was the interest when I was writing the piece. And so this is kind of like a sound environment that I grew up with. Another kind of a sound environment I used in a different piece I want to share with you, since there are some heavy metal lovers, and I want to share with you is from a recent album called An Atlas of Time. Let me share my Spotify here. Now you can see it's called An Atlas of Time. This piece was written in 2012 to 13, between 12 and 13. Was commissioned by Ensemble Modern for their Young Composers Workshop. It was recorded with Boston Modern Orchestra Project. Again, I was thinking about different movements and places. So the first one I want to play for you now is called International. International is this song that is like the theme song, the anthem of communism, like socialist countries. We all know those songs, grow up with it because as a kid you learn it. As instrumentalists in the the repertoire, they print it and you play. And once you hear this song, you recognize it immediately. Even in the Beijing opera, the model opera, they tried many different ways to incorporate international dum 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 la 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 into Beijing opera when the revolutionary hero is going to sacrifice him or herself, when the enemies are defeated, when the sun rises from the east, very symbolic and very, simple metaphor. You hear this music. And I was very interested in this, not because I know it, but because I realized not the rest of the world is as familiar and have the similar association. But also, as I mentioned, I grew up in the 80s. 80s was the first time when China started to have our own popular music and rock and roll. I was a very good student and a very good kid. I was, I played the piano at home since when I was 5, and I was doing very well academically. But I was drawn to this rock and roll, which is maybe at the beginning was not associated with good kids, but there's something about the sound and the image of those singers really attracted me as you grow into a teenager later. And I picked this particular song because there are different versions of International in Chinese, in Russian, in English, in French, in German. And in particular, there's a version sung by the first Chinese rock and roll band called the Tang Dynasty. They did this really nice arrangement in the style of rock and roll in that time. And I mixed it in with other versions of it. I did some electronic process. But the overall intention behind this was, again, now only looking back, I realized I'm so into noise and trying to really have a 1920 piece, musicians ensemble there, but have this really noisy tape there. And I'm trying to make the ensemble heard above the tape because there's really so much noise, not only real environmental noise, but also in your head. There are different messages going through as you're growing up, and different ideologies and, popular music and different new literatures. As I mentioned, it really forming your own view of the world where so much information has to be processed. So this movement is about this really almost saturated result of the noise. And also I grew up listening to radio, so some of the process is very lo-fi. And you tune to the frequency and you kind of don't get it. And then you try to find it. And then sometimes you hear it. Sometimes it's being interfered. My dad used to, in the evening, just take out this little radio and trying to listen to something outside of China. And sometimes he finds it, sometimes he couldn't. This noise is always in my head as well. We're searching for some other sources of news and the other world that we're interested in exploring, but having trouble getting to. So I'm gonna play this movement and see what you think. And that goes into the next movement, which has a different image of hearing the bells in Rome and images of cathedral melting. And any questions?
In the beginning, I actually thought of like firecrackers, or like fireworks. Pew!
The beginning of the movement, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you done, Julia?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the role of the amplified breath.
Yeah.
In the sort of, the noise theme and the sort of like trying to zero in and focus on something noise theme, since the breath was gradually speeding up, and since like sometimes everything would drop out and just have the breath, it was giving me kind of a sense of panic, of urgency, and I'm not sure like if that was intended or like where that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wrote this in 2012, right? And I was thinking about air pollution as well, and then as a metaphor to free speech. So the Tang Dynasty version of it was sung at Tiananmen in 1989, when the student protested the government for more democracy, basically. And the meanwhile, it's a socialist song. And then I thought about how successful the economic reform has been, while actually we all have to pay the price in many other ways, politically and environmentally. So the breathing sound was, on one hand, is about really can't breathe because of the air pollution. The other hand is that we're going with the economy first, but with the politics, we don't know when. So there are things you cannot say, so there was sudden drop of silence, yes, and that's a good catch, yes.
Thank
kind
you.
of indicating, yeah. Other questions? No? Okay. Then I will go on to another piece. Since many of you mentioned the interest in voice, I just want to mention my relationship with noise. With voice is that I actually didn't set text for most of my compositions are instrumental. Because on one hand, it's it's the opportunity, but on the other hand it's why do you need to sing? Why can't you just say it? Why do you have to sing with such intensity, such heightened emotion? I have to be very convinced. I'm talking about the Western way, operatic way. But on the other hand, I grew up with this folk music just down the street with everyone in the family and around the street, and my neighbors would just after work go to the park and sing. They would sing this crazy local opera, which is really intense and dramatic. And they would turn into the character, and as part of who they are. And then I'm just trying to at the whole time I just didn't have a more convincing way for myself to set until more recently I tried. Anyway, so before really setting text, like for voice and ensembles and instruments, my work related to voice is through translating speech. So there's the linguistic contours and the intonations of language is interesting, because when you speak a language, it does have a melodic and tonal aspect of it that is from language to language very different. And I started to transliterate, basically writing down the speech and the score, like Bartok did, like Janacek did, with the notes and some bending pitches and the rhythm. And I just love those things. You kind of like find your own objects, and then you can work with them. And I did have some pieces that actually use those kind of material, which I'm going to share with you so you can hear. And then we can move on from there to like actually setting text. Okay, so it's part of the urban inventory, the piece I played the first movement, City Park, for you at the very beginning. This is an old lady from my mother's side hometown who passed away, who used to be this folk artist who's illiterate, but she makes these beautiful paper cuts. While she makes the paper cuts, she makes up stories. She made up many stories and poetries along her work, and her work was preserved later by UNESCO. But it happens to be one aunt of mine lived next door to her, so she heard this old lady reciting, her things for years. So I asked my aunt to recite those things, and I recorded them and found them really moving and fascinating. And I wrote one movement of urban inventory using this vocal material. And as I was talking about at the beginning, I do realize all my life I lived in big cities, never in a village, but I never lost the connection to the country and the peasants, because the grandparents' generation are all peasants, and just like that, and they are so deeply connected to the large family. And we always had this, first of all, the connection is the language. If I go to the village, I could sound like them more or less. And also it's the people you really know, and the custom, and then the food and everything connects you. Although, I was born and raised different from my distant cousins, but there's always this connection, So I find very moving to think about in terms of like a lot of opportunities, or we call it fate, or the direction of your life was kind of determined on which family you were born in, and who got left behind in the village, and who didn't have this, what I had, but are really closely related to me. Yeah, so this movement is a transliteration from some of her speeches, rewritten for the ensemble. But she's very humorous and lighthearted. I just want to capture that aspect of the music as well. So you hear a little bit of this. Yeah, so it's that movement with transliteration into instrumental music. As you see, I imagine the voice to be different kind of instruments and give different timbres to that. So after that, and around the time I realized, okay, maybe besides transliterating exact voice, I could kind of reimagine some of the materials by transliterating, like writing it down. I can find maybe no, this contour interests me, or this sliding down with a particular accent interests me, or listening to this shape in the context interests me. I'm trying to figure out why, it kind of just like, I like this. I'll just work with this. And then I try to reimagine speech-like melody. And I want to give you another example to show you not a precise transliteration, but more like a speech-inspired piece. Okay, let me see this. Let me find it here. Yeah. And this is back to Spotify. Yeah, this is an album from 2018, Urban Inventory. I played the title piece and the other movement. Gifts of Gap, that was the one I just played for you. And then the last track is Pass Beyond. I just want to play you the opening, which shows you some speech-inspired melody. So that's the opening of Pass Beyond. It's quite intense. And you hear this technique I used a lot in instrumental writing is heterophony. So it's more coming from listening to vernacular folk music, where you have the small counterpoint as a result of, group playing and singing that are amateurish. Where the people are not trying to just stay strictly together, which creates this this harmony and melody at the same time, and the shape of it. That piece was composed after I graduated from Columbia University. I had no job, and I have to have my appendix removed. That was painful, and that was recovering in the hospital in China. And if you have ever had a, even small operation like that, they ask you to get up and walk because, you need to recover. Like just a couple hours later, they just want you to walk around to make sure, everywhere's okay. And every day you have to just move around while you're being hospitalized. The idea come from this experience because you walk through all the rooms, the doors are open, people are chatting, and there are also people who don't get a room. They stay along the hallway. You really get to talk to people. You get to see all kinds of people. Like in that department, like appendix removal is like nothing. Everyone else is dealing with much more serious, situations or operations. And all of a sudden, then you find you have a lot to talk about with these people, you don't know. You talk about how you feel today, you talk about who's coming to see you today, and talk about, are you still on this pain reliever or you're still on this anti-inflammatory thing, and you talk about, where you're from, and what do you do usually, and how that is translated into this piece. What I thought was, I connect with people when people and myself, when everyone's under this physical pain and struggle so much, and then I thought about Rachel, I thought about Rachel, and language probably connects us in a more abstract way. The ritual of, using those big lower brass instruments and drums and cymbals, and just walk through this process of recovering. So I didn't use any particular transliteration, but I did listen to a lot of Buddhist chanting in different languages, the recitations. I find the pacing and everything really calming, and then that comes to the piece. That's where it's from. And then, then I move on to the next stage, leap forward to a pandemic. And I got this opportunity to write one episode of an opera. I love this kind of new way of thinking about composing. I just said yes because, one episode is only 10 to 15 minutes. Mine was like 10 minutes. And there are 8 composers total to tell one entire story, a dramatic story. Let's think about just like TV show. And then it's a TV drama, which means the singers could be singing, could also be just acting like in MTV. And their singers offstage singing or pre-recorded, voices coming through the screen. Another thing is the same characters would develop throughout the story, but the musical language shifts dramatically from composer number 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Could be someone who's, for instance, very diatonic. Could be someone who's very, just repetitive, or it could be someone who was rather, extreme. I was really fascinated, and also everything was done remotely. How are you going to work with that? Because usually you go through a lot of process of revising, which we didn't have. So the instruments were recorded like in the festival, right, Peter? You have click tracks. Yeah, click track after, then you add another layer, then you have the ensemble, and then you have the singer singing. I said yes because I want to see how musically it could work. And also if the opera is done, that's in 8 different styles. You don't have to love every single style to stick to the story, which is really fascinating. I'm always interested in how other people approach the same kind of, the same script. Then I want to show you a bit of my episode of this opera. Screen share. It's called Desert Inn with Boston Lyric Opera. And my episode is episode 5. It's interesting because there's not much of an action drama, or not so much going on when you're thrown into in the middle of the story. And basically, the main plot of this opera overall is about couples with lost lovers trying to regain this love, but they have to sacrifice something else, like a Black Mirror. Like there's some superpower somebody has, but you have to pay a price to be with a deceased one. And my episode, between the woman and the man, you're going to see they're like very close friend and brother sister, kind of brother sisterhood, but the man just kind of betrayed the woman in the previous scene. I'm going to show you a little bit and then we can talk.
I have built a garden. Come down and take it. I dare you.
Soft sheets couldn't even hold me back. Soft sheets couldn't even hold me back. Soft sheets couldn't even hold me back.
Intense. The result is intense. Any questions? Totally. When I read the plot, and I was like, there's something about Black Mirror, right? You were able to erase somebody's memory. You're able to revive someone to relive a life. I was thinking about San Junipero. If you've seen that episode of Black Mirror, it's really it's like reviving and reliving life. So for the process of writing this, it's interesting because first of all, as you can see, a lot of my previous work has to do with folk music and, rather abstract and, you say, intense expressions, right? But with this one, first of all, they are the best opera singers, if you know them. And they want to sing. They don't want to scream. They don't want to make weird sounds. It's not this kind of project. You have to know how to make them sing in their range, the high and low and rest and all that. And also is a written story. So do you agree with the emotional reaction of the character or not is not up to me. I'm given the moment, and it was only in writing, so I didn't see the shooting. The shooting was done last. I was quite impressed. And also, I didn't know they would be acting or actually singing on site. That's the director's choice. So imagine you are never late. You were never late, whatever. I began to worry. You'd vanished, turned into a memory. If it's being sung or spoken like that, other than being projected in this beautiful, this moon-shaped, desert scene, would be very different. If I seen the shooting first, I would write different music. So given all that as a consideration, what I had is just a text. And I just really read through this many times and trying to figure, like, you're never late, I know you've been hanging out with this person that I told you not to, but you're not going to tell me. I'm not going to reveal this in front of you because, I still love you as, So when I say you're never late, there's so much going on there, but I cannot imagine the character saying, you are never late. It's, I just had the sense that you were never late, but there's so much weight in this very low and simple expression. And then I go through the text and trying to find places where I can take off. The first place I found was like when Federico, the guy, says, trust me, but she knows that he's lying. But then what she's saying is not, you're lying to me. She said, trust you, poor Federico, and she said, so open-hearted, Poor Federico, so quick to trust, so easily you forget. We're the only ones. I just thought about talking through this and give a lot of those drama to the ensemble, as you can hear. There's so much going on in her heart, like we all experience in real life. You probably wouldn't, even though you're so hurt, you're so disappointed, you would not sing at the top of your voice for that, because that is probably saved for another occasion in other episodes when there are like other things. I look at the overall arc and like, she's really hurt and betrayed and disappointed. But what he says is, poor Federico, you're so open-hearted, but you don't know the only one who love you are us. So I thought this is a beautiful aria. She's gonna sing in her middle range, and it's gonna be more diatonic and calm and give the drama to the ensemble. So I thought about that. Yeah, and Sunny, its second part of the scene was at the reception desk in the hotel. So she's gonna see her brother, and she's not gonna remember him because Cass erased the memory. So I gave her more almost like pentatonic da 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 da. She's more of an innocent mind. She doesn't know she's being manipulated yet. And then when the moment hit, there's like noisy big chords and distortion in the ensemble. So a lot of those drama were just combined with voice and the ensemble. It's actually, this is the first attempt for me to write something more operatic, and it's done remotely, so a lot to be reconsidered too. But I just want to share this as an experience, because it's basically, we have to, like, I was examining this and really trying to figure out the moments they have to project the emotion only through a voice to the full, and then there are other moments it's building, and it's building, and the timing between things, you kind of know they have to raise a glass, they have to click, and there's no fermata, there's only click track. So you kind of have to imagine, okay, I'm doing this, and look at his eyes, and then think, and then say, trust you? Not, I don't want to trust you. So kind of this timing, in some ways, a lot of pandemic work is like solo instrumental or more guided improvisation with more free timing. But this one has to be very precise, more precise than a normal opera situation, because it's a click track. You have to look at and count one, I think, trust you, music, trust you, poor Federico, it has to be, it's more challenging for me because it has to be just the right timing so that doesn't feel like it's snapped to the grid. You cannot go to live and say, take it a little bit slower or faster. No. So it's quite interesting in the experience, A lot has to, with physical action, you have to think, and he walks to her, and then, like, how many measures do you want him to walk? I don't know. He can walk 2 steps, he can walk 20 steps. But more or less, as you're guessing how the director will be executing, you want to give more flexibility, So I try to measure it and let him settle in, and she looks at him, say, you're never late. And time it, almost like time it first, and then filling with music, and then I'd begin to worry. You'd vanished, turned into a memory. Basic is my speech, the speed of my speech. Anyway, any questions? No? Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, in this process I realized it's very different from writing other music, is I have to negotiate my own style and the style of the story. Yeah. Anyway, I think Eric has a question.
Yeah, I do. I was curious, like, what do you see as some of the challenges of setting English texts?
First of all, I have to read, and I ask different native speakers to read to me, so I know how they pause differently and the intonations. And also, as a singer, Peter can tell us there are certain registers. For instance, when it's high, very high, it can be very loud, or sometimes very soft, sometimes not. And certain vowels like open, right, could be projected. Certain closed ones have to be modified. If you have a very high E, for instance, right, you have to kind of open it. If you have a very short vowel and you want to stretch it, you probably will distort the word itself. So I was thinking about how it could be understood first. Yeah. And the words need to be understood, because if you too much rely on the subtitles, it just takes a lot away. And also I'm thinking, if you couldn't get every single word, are there anything else we could do to make you at least know the mood of it? Get the pacing and the acting like seeing a pantomime. Maybe you understand the tension between the characters. But that's out of my hand, or I can only try to set the text as clear as possible. So I still, as you can see, I really follow the shape of language. Yeah, I try not to go against it and find places to get out of to really sing. Yeah. For instance, this one place Sunny was saying, "Oh dear, oh, here you are, my love, waiting for our date," right? I read this. Oh, here you are, my love, waiting for our date. I imagine like what the director did. They are a little bit away from each other, because if they're so close to each other, you probably wouldn't need to sing like that. So, oh, there you are, my love. So, oh, there you are my love. I would move my fingers to really know where it's going. Waiting for our date. So waiting for our date, and there's nothing that significant to elaborate. So I didn't elaborate. See, but by following the contour, it could be more abstract or atonal, but this character is rather relatively simpler at this moment, and I want to differentiate this voice. So she has more, as I said, pentatonic, kind of diatonic, but Cass has more tension in her harmony, if you listen. Yeah. Really just follow the speech. Yeah. And find the dramatic moment and time it. And really, I asked myself whether it is the dramatic moment. A list of things. Is a list of things for us to remember. We're out of him. The faucets are leaking. The drive needs clearing. The cow needs milking. Just one more thing. When I read that, I thought it's just a continuous phrase, and I just thought, okay, so this could be a sequence, for instance, to continue that. Just one more thing. And her memory is being erased. Just one more thing. She forgot, I'm forgetting. So I thought, there could be a pause, right? Just one more thing. What is that one more thing? I'm forgetting. Yeah. Did I answer the question? I don't know. Yeah, it's rather... Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So now that you've been writing a little bit for voice, does it change like how you write for just instrumental music?
I think it does, because I was trained as a pianist since when I was 5. And at the same time, I take ear training lessons. So my training as a composer started with actually writing songs in the conservatory prep school. But I do not claim those songs like my work. But the pedagogy is like, write a melody that you can sing. Write a song you can sing. Set the Chinese text you can sing. And then write piano, solo piano music. And then write voice and piano and add instruments and learn. That's the pedagogy I went through. So it's less of a change, I would say, but more of a reminder. I always try to, I sing those lines. At least, although they're not my register, I can feel when I need to breathe, how much it takes, it's approximate, but it's still better than not singing, right? And then when I write instrumental music, I also go through the parts, like we're writing for people, like I'm writing for Eric. I don't play percussion, okay, but I want to imagine if I could move from here to here. If I could imagine, I could do that and sing this and remember that rhythm. He can do it because he's a professional, he's doing that. So like singing is more like in simulating each part in your head. Like you really are writing for people. You want to challenge them, but you know what to challenge, right? But if you don't have a purpose, and there are ways to make everyone work together well for a adventurous project without creating unnecessary trouble. We don't do that because you have to know why, right? And so the singing is really makes me more think about human. Playing the instrument is the same, right? The lips and the physical gestures, and also like whatever is in your head is never gonna be the piece you hear. That's not the point. Some people cannot accept that fact. Is that just that's not what I imagined. Well, it's not what you imagined. This is just not what you imagined. Sorry, but maybe it's always the interpretation is sometimes not just musicians interpreting, it's just musicians being musicians playing it. And that's the piece. Like I imagine I'm pregnant, I was pregnant. I was imagining a baby. Okay, now I have this toddler. This is not what I imagined, by the way. But this is just like the piece take off and given birth by the musicians. And I think that's also what I realized. More working with singers, it's more unpredictable, and I realized you have to leave the space. You have to. Because that's where they live and where the piece can live, right? Otherwise, you can just write for your head. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, because when I was writing it, it's important to know who will be singing, right? I had no idea. And then I saw the cast. I'm like, wow, those are like really good singers. And then I know some of them by not personally, by watching them online. Then I suddenly realized, oh, my original setting for cast is just a little bit low for Isabel Leonard. And then I just went in and shifted things. As you can hear in this particular, it's very triadic, like complex chords, but it's triad based. So that was easy for me to shift a third or something, higher without really changing, like recomposing each note, just shifting, and harmonically it works. Anything else? Follow Shoshana's question is that as a pianist, I only played solo. I trained as soloist. I don't practice much anymore, but you don't think about intonation as a pianist. As a composer, you also don't think about it. But when you write for people to sing, you have to think about how they're going to find the pitches. Sometimes singers all go out of tune. That's not true, because you set up the context that to make them very confused. Or sometimes you think you give the reference by giving them a line or a doubling by a bassoon or a clarinet or violin, but the overall context is muddy or confusing or contradictory enough for them to want to sing something else. That's also something I learned, because they have to grow with the root and the branches and then just go where they want to grow. But if you don't give the context, harmonic context, it's impossible. If you give the harmonic context, so they know when they sing in the chord and outside the chord and moving from chord A to chord B, they will find it. Moving from A chord to B chord through something in between, but they are very clear. They can go. But otherwise, they're always trying to figure out where they are and trying to memorize the words and the rhythm and to act. That's impossible. And to be prepared for, in real life, there's no perfection, to react. It's impossible. Yeah. I just thought giving the musical context so they can grab onto. They're not hitting the piano who will not go out of tune. Really, in the context, in relation to the overall or to particular singers and instruments. And not just look at the score, but listen. You have so many things going on, but what can Peter hear? What can Julian hear when he's singing or he's playing this? Is the real thing you're providing them, right?
I'm curious, Lou, do you compose at the piano at all?
I do. I always start at the piano just as it's my instrument. I try to improvise and do things, and I always say none of that is useful. But it's a habit to start from there. Well, it's like a challenge. You pick up your instrument. It's like a warming up, right? But you thought, oh, maybe I can come up with some good ideas. I tell you, like, there's never a good idea. It's just never a good idea. But it only gives you an opportunity to see that you tend to repeat or tend to go to what you physically are able to do and, are used to or you're listening to, or something from the back of your mind pops out. But it's starting the engine, right? You go into the gym. You're not going to run a marathon, right? You're not going to do something too strenuous. And but this process, you have to be patient. And also, I think one has to be very, very critical, because if you write 100 pages, doesn't mean you have to take one page, right? Or sometimes we have because of the deadline, but oftentimes, you don't have to tell anyone that is not what you're trying to do. Like, this is not what you're trying to make for your dinner, but you're going to have to eat it. Or next time, well, maybe you wanted the noodle differently. Yeah, I do. But, it's not really fruitful. But I can't really skip that step, you see. At the conservatory, when I was an undergrad, people are trying to be very snobbish. It's like, composers, we have everything in our ears. We don't go to the piano. We just write at the desk. And as a fact that the tests we took, the fugue and the many variations and writing things you're given a like 2-measure theme, and you just write sitting at the desk next to several of your colleagues, friends. People say, oh, you still go to the piano to compose? It's like, oh, he doesn't have good ears, can't really hear. But I do start at the piano, and again, it's not directly resulting in anything useful, but it's important. Yeah, and I'm very grateful to have this facility. I don't know how a violinist or a cellist or oboist would compose. It would be a different process. Yeah.
Well, my clock just hit 2. If there are any lingering questions, maybe we can catch them once we come down off of YouTube. But I do want to say thank you so much for being here, Lou.
Oh, sure.
Always
My
a pleasure.
Yeah.
I also always forget how funny you are and how much you crack me up with your stories and your humor.
That's a funny thing. I'm not trying to be funny. Some people will try to be funny, and the humor doesn't get translated. Yeah, for many years, I hardly laugh at funny TV shows, and one day, all of a sudden, I could understand. Wow, that was really a revolution. I used to do my stretches while my roommate watching 30 Rock, and I was like, what's so funny about that show? It's not funny at all. But yeah, anyway.